Get Pucked.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Dave, Matt, Vito here in this episode, and we are post free agent frenzy. Little 3 days or so to digest and really process what went down. Right out the gate, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs middle to what you feel the Canadiens did. Looks like a thumbs up for Dave.
Overall, it's a thumbs up. If you go back to
how can I not be?
Acquisition and all that, that's a thumbs up.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the main piece. All right. There are the Kaapo Kähkönens that came in. There are the Sammy Blais that came in. You know, welcome. But there's a much more interesting thing to discuss, I think. So Logan Mailloux was traded. All right. We all kind of suspected that this was likely one of the guys that was on the block for some time now, in particular after Dobson came in. And he's traded to St. Louis Blues for Zachary Bolduc. This is a guy drafted mid-first round, had a pretty decent little half-season breakout after the Four Nations last season, was one of the top, if not the top, goal-scoring rookie from that point on to the end of the season. I know how everybody was kind of mentioning that, and that was like a big thing. So exciting. The question, though, and I'm kind of lifting this from a couple of irate Habs fans who didn't like the trade. They're saying, and this is my question to you, are we potentially looking at Xhekaj 2.0 trade? Are we looking at okay, hold on a second. In case you can't see, they're both shaking their heads no at the same time. Just letting me set the context here. According to some, not me, according to some, you're looking at a promising young defenseman who didn't really get his chance to show what he's got in Montreal in the big club, traded before he got to the point where he was mature and going to be the defenseman of what he's going to be, for a young-ish winger on another team who is a French Canadian who can play center.
Did you just say youngish? They were in this from the same draft.
Well, I meant in terms of like when you compare it to like Drouin. Like he was young-ish when he came over.
Oh,
but I think he was older than Bolduc when he came. But anyways, so basically a wash. Go ahead, explain to me as I take on the onus of asking the question on behalf of these fans, why this is not Xhekaj 2.0.
Okay, well, look, it's obviously not. Mikhail Sergachev played the obligatory 9 games before being sent back down, and he was a top 10 draft pick. You knew he was going to be a stud defenseman. There was no questions marks that I remember ever about Mikhail Sergachev. He was going to be a stud defenseman that was going to be in the Canadiens, top 4 for a very, very, very long time coming. And he was traded for a guy who all of a sudden had all the pressure in the world to come here, was supposed to be a superstar, put in the wrong position for a long, like there's so many things that are just not this situation whatsoever. It's not even funny. Logan Mailloux was a first-round draft pick, a late first-round draft pick, and he's had his chances to show what he can do, really. I think they gave him some fair shots. They watched him at a development level in the AHL as well. He's just not the guy that fans like. The Canadiens fans are very good on paper. Everything is great on paper. Everything's perfect. But like you have to actually watch the games. And you have to actually watch the players develop. And you have to talk to the people who watch, who know. And it's just he wasn't the player that most Montreal Canadiens fans. Now, can you eventually develop in that player? Sure, maybe, perhaps. But I think the Canadiens had the luxury of not having to figure that out. And probably looked at him and said, it wasn't really for him. And they traded him for a guy who does, I don't want to say zero expectations compared to the point, but like very little expectations. He's coming in here and he's going to play a third line role, maybe jump into the top 6. He's a young guy, so he has a lot of room to breathe and a lot of room to develop within this organization. It's just such a better trade than the one in Sergachev. As soon as it was done, if you're paying attention, you were kind of like, ooh, that it made you uneasy. As soon I remember, I finished a shift. I was working the midday at TSN 690. I finished my shift. I went over to my post editing computer as Melnick hit the air, and I was asked to stay because that huge trade went down the line, and I had to. And I remember the first thought of it was like, I'm not a big fan of this trade right off the bat. there's just something that didn't sit well with trading Mikhail Sergachev. And obviously, looking back, it was right. So this is not at all this. Logan Mailloux is not Mikhail Sergachev. I don't think he'll ever really develop into that. And even if he does, I think the chance that they took on a Zach Bolduc, I think it's worth the shot, and I think it's a good trade.
All right. Vito,
I think it was just a good old hockey trade. It was two teams that were trading from positions of strength. If you look at St. Louis, they have wingers. Zachary Bolduc, the fans really love him. They liked what he did last season. But with Kyrou there and Snuggerud and other players, there was just no place for somebody like Zachary Bolduc on that team, and they really had a need on the right side of their defense. So they went and they got a young guy who happened to have been drafted in the same draft. Now, something to keep in mind when it comes to Logan Mailloux, if you remember that draft, besides the fact of him saying don't draft him, he fell all the way where he ended up being selected because of the scandal and the things that were going on there. But originally, before all of that happened, he was projected to be a top 15, top 16 type of pick in that draft. So the thing is, when it comes to Zachary Bolduc versus the Drouin situation, is that Drouin came here and was expected to be like almost a savior of sorts. He was expected to take on a much bigger role than he was ever meant to play in the NHL. Versus Zachary Bolduc is coming into a team that there's a huge supportive cast there. He's definitely a piece of the puzzle. He's going to bring certain elements of physicality, certain elements of his game that it's going to likely fit well. Versus when Drouin got here, it was basically, might play center. He might play wing. He might, he played center in the juniors. It could work. So when certain journalists asked Kent Hughes about that, what about Zachary Bolduc? Could he play center? The first thing he said, the last time he played center was in the juniors. But yes, is there that versatility to maybe take faceoffs? And I'm paraphrasing, of course. He said, yeah, sure. But by no means was there the notion that, we've got him to play center.
But people picked up on that. That's a great thing to mention, because I think that has a lot to do with the fact of why people are suggesting this is a potential Sergachev 2.0, that you have a guy who is not a center. He could do it, I suppose. Like a lot of players, they're versatile, but he plays the wing. That's what he is.
He couldn't do it any more than Slavkovsky could play center. It's not their thing.
There's a different it's a different organization than back then. Mark Bergevin so desperately wanted a center, he would have put anybody there. Like anything, anybody and anyone that fit Galchenyuk, whatever you want to say. They just tried to fit anybody there. His philosophy was, I need a center and I'm going to try to make anybody work. Like this, or the way they're building this team is completely different. So I understand having maybe like a PTSD of that, of like, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. But you got just let them work it out. And I think that Ken Hughes' answer was perfect. And it's clear he's not going to be your second line. This is not the 2C move that everyone was expecting. I think everyone expected that because Logan Mailloux, everyone thought, Logan Mailloux is going to get us Crosby. He's going to get us
wow.
You got.
I think
overrated in that
they
sense.
expected Mailloux to be part of a package for, I guess, a bigger name player, so to speak. Nobody expected the Zachary Bolduc. It came out of nowhere, that trade, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
It was all like
trades often do.
Grabbing Mailloux and tossing him in a package. People expected it was for Kyrou and things like that, and it didn't work out that way.
But apparently that was the truth, that there was works. They were trying to make a package for Kyrou. He was a big part of it. They wanted some other stuff. It fell through. And then instead of just scrapping the whole thing, because... And that's the other big thing I think people are kind of missing the point when they talk about this. They traded Sergachev when they needed Sergachev. He was going to come up and he was going to be on that side. And they don't need Mailloux. That's the difference. That's why he was expendable. That because they picked up Dobson. So to Dave's point, exactly on that same topic, I mean, I can get it. I can understand the parallels. But this is not going to be a Sergachev 2.0.
No,
and anybody who has that concern, you guys need to just take a breather and
you
be like,
it.
I'm going to be okay.
But this is what I was saying by positions of strength, right? On the right side defense, Montreal's still a bit weak on the right side, but it looked like they had to come to a choice whether it was going to be Reinbacher or Mailloux to have that slot available if and when the time comes. And it wasn't going to be Mailloux. Now with this administration that drafted Reinbacher and they've been developing and going through the motions with him with his injuries and things of that nature, right? So Mailloux had a certain value, and now it's St. Louis is going to have to insulate him properly. People who have watched Mailloux know that from an offensive standpoint, he can produce. He can move the puck. His lateral movement needs a bit of work, but it's his decision-making in defensive game that needs a whole lot of work. And that's why this season, for St. Louis St. Louis Blues fans who would tune into this, that's the one thing, the one knock on him is his defensive game, and his production dropped this season because he was expected, and they asked him to essentially focus on his defensive game and then work on his decision-making. But Mailloux is a good player. I personally think his ceiling, and I could be wrong, is that he's going to be an everyday second pairing NHL defenseman. I don't expect him to be a first pairing guy. I don't expect him to be a generational defenseman. He's not. I don't expect it to be elite, but it's not impossible for him to become a Jeff Petrie-esque type of guy. Mike Matheson on the right, very good get in the first round.
I got to agree with you. I mean, I don't know exactly if he'll be a 4 or 5 or whatever. I think it's something. He's going to figure it out. I think he will be an NHL defenseman. And I think what you said makes sense a lot too. I think when you break it down, this was a very old school hockey trade. I think both teams received something of fair value that are going to help their team. Ultimately, though, not to be biased for the Canadiens, I think they made out better. I think you actually got something pretty special in this kid coming here. And it's going to help. It's going to help with the offense numbers.
I'll say this. If Mailloux wasn't a right-hand defenseman, and he was a left-hand defenseman, this trade wasn't going through. The fact that he's a righty, and righties are rare in the NHL, it bumped up that value just a little bit more.
It's very fair. That's a very fair take. I mean, let's diving into staying on the topic of defensemen, but because they brought Dobson in and because you're seeing the play unfold now where they've now unloaded Mailloux and stuff, there's another defenseman that people have been talking about quite a bit. And it's just like everybody kind of holding their breath, right? Mike Matheson, what's going to happen? I know Kent Hughes was asked directly, like, is he on the team? Do you expect, is he like part of the team moving forward? And I think his answer was just bluntly, yes, Mike Matheson is on this team. Mm-hmm. What is he going to say? You know what I mean? Like, no, I have total plans. I'm going to trade it. So with the grain of salt,
it would diminish the value of the player.
But I ask you this. I mean, how bad do they need to trade Mike Matheson? Is it a necessity? Can he play this season on the Canadiens? So it's not like some people are suggesting where he is as good as gone. It's just a matter of when.
In an ideal situation, in an ideal scenario, yes, they're trading him. They get what the return that they feel they need to get. You know, there's teams out there that have already made it known that they're looking for a top 4 defenseman, and he is that. He's a top 4 defenseman. Is he the primary target? Time will tell. But the way I see it is that they don't have to trade Mike Matheson. Some are making the connection there because, you know, you look at the plethora of defensemen that they have, especially on the left side. You look at the way their cap situation is right now. It would solve a problem, especially from a cap perspective, even though there's other options there and other solutions there. I just think that with Mike Matheson, a part of them might be a little reluctant to do it because they don't know if Reinbacher is actually ready to come in right out of the gate. So by having somebody like Mike Matheson who plays right away and might play on the second pairing left side, and you know, you don't want to do this, but shifting, Lane Hutson on the right side because he's fully capable of playing that, at least until they really get a good idea of where Reinbacher is at in his development and not having to rush him. That might be something that's actually happening at the conversation table and what they're kind of thinking about. Maybe we shouldn't rush into trading away Mike Matheson, especially with the cap, his cap being what it is.
But look at the dominoes, no? Like what you just outlined, right? I mean, if Reinbacher doesn't come up, you're going to not only keep a guy that probably is not in your long-term plans, but you're going to move a guy who is in your long-term plans to the other side.
But he was already playing it last year. Yeah, was successful, right? Yeah. It's not ideal. Don't get me wrong. It's not ideal. You want Lane Hutson on your strong side, but at the same time, you have to look at it the other way too. They don't want to have a big glaring hole on the right side going into a season that they believe is a playoff year.
Yeah,
fair.
I honestly think a lot of people they saw the Dobson trade, and then everyone put like, oh, they're thinking and into the future, their lenses into the future, and they saw that Reinbacher in that top 4 and just how well it lined up. But I think you're a year away from that. I think Reinbacher starts the season in the AHL. I think that was always the plan. And if you listen to Kent Hughes and the way they've been speaking, I think that is honestly I think they don't want to rush David Reinbacher. And so I think that he's going to start the season at least in the AHL, and I think you're most likely going to see Matheson stay. Your initial, as soon as the Dobson trade happened, my initial was like, okay, now they could get rid of Matheson, and you're kind of doing the math and you're looking at but after talking to some people, it seems to be that they don't want to rush things. And again, you trade Matheson, you bring up Reinbacher, and an injury happens, and then all of a sudden you're struggling with that depth. You don't have the Mailloux anymore, you don't have the Matheson, and you're struggling with that depth, which is not anything you really want in a season like that's up and coming. So the more and more I think about it, the more I think that unless they really, really get a steal for a 2C or they really can make a move, I think that it's more than likely that Matheson starts the season as a Montreal Canadien, at least.
I also think that by having Matheson finally in a role where he's supposed to play, so like let's say a second pairing LD, and playing anywhere between 18 and 20 minutes rather than 23 and 24 and 25 minutes, it'll benefit him. The Habs will benefit from that. And then come the trade deadline, let's say Montreal happens to be out of it, or then his value, his stock is probably going to be even higher than it was this season, because this season he had a bit of a down year because of how many minutes he was playing. His highest value on the market was the year before when he had 62 points in 82 games.
Mm-hmm.
But it dropped off because he was playing way too much. And it's only once Guhle started taking it, and then Lane Hutson. But all that to say, I think because, again, if you're looking at it, I don't think nothing's going to stop Kent Hughes from making a trade if the right package comes along and if the team comes in and says, we want Mike Matheson. He's going to make that deal. But at the same time, if the question is, are they in a rush to move him? No, they're not in a rush, because they could still use him the ways that we described them, explained it to be. Like, they could still use him in every aspect that we described, and it's a nice safety net to have. You know what you're getting, and he's only $4.8 million.
No, that's probably the best way to look at it. I think a lot of people are just like, they look at him, they look at the salary, they look of the age also, where clearly he's not going to be the guy of the future, and you see who's coming up, and it's just like, oh, strike now and use him to, on one hand they'll rip him, but then on the other hand they'll go and include him as the main piece in a trade package for a 2C. I mean, it's the nature of the fandom. But I would not be surprised to basically come full circle to my question here. I would not be surprised if he starts this season. Anything can happen, and he could be included in a bigger trade, but it's not like it would blow me away saying, wow, I can't believe he wasn't able to trade him and we're going to do a whole other year with him. And I wouldn't frankly be all that upset about it, to be honest with you. I don't think he's that bad as people making him out to be.
A lot of people are connecting the dots. Again, it comes down to the cap, because they're seeing Montreal's over the cap, and if you go on Puckpedia and you see how much they're up over
it's his salary.
It's almost his salary. Yeah. But if you actually look at Puckpedia's roster for the Montreal Canadiens, there's Joshua Roy there. There's Delgaizo there, the Delgaizo, whatever his name is, that just got signed. That's there. There's a few players that are just basically Laval bound. That when you look at how much the Canadiens are actually over the cap by, and that's even if you were to send Kapanen down, if he agrees to go down, they're only above the cap by $2.9 million. Like, they'll make that money work, even if. In a night, they don't want to put Carey Price on off-season LTIR, but if they can't move his contract, and that's what they have to do, then that's what they're going to do. They're in no position to be like, oh, they have to do something. Not really, anyway. From a cap perspective, I'm saying there's
for sure.
Like, see this, that. No.
Yeah.
Talk about from a cap perspective.
Speaking of the cap and the contracts, Christian Dvorak getting a $5.4 million contract with the Flyers made you guys feel what?
Disgusting.
Sad for Philadelphia fans.
Okay. What about the Armia contract?
But that was in line with what I had said a bunch of episodes ago, that I think Armia this year, like, Armia got overpaid by Marc Bergevin and got a good contract. His next contract, if you go look at his numbers and you go look at the way he was playing, it was somewhere in the 2. I said 2.4. He ended up being 2.5. It's perfect for him. Yep. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's just LA made a bunch of questionable moves. So you're just it's just like, what's happening over there?
Several teams made some pretty questionable
Ken
moves
Holland.
there.
That's the Ken Holland effect, right?
But listen,
he just set back the LA Kings from a cap perspective by like 5-6 years at least.
Yeah, but they're going to go to the Stanley Cup. They got Corey Perry. They'll lose, but they're going to go to the Stanley Cup.
They also got Cody Ceci.
Well, maybe that balances out.
Ceci,
Now they're not
baby.
going to go. Talking about those two individuals, say what you will about them, say what you will, and you can say quite a bit. That one of the things that you can say, though, is they were both pretty important to the penalty kill on the team. With them gone, are you guys concerned about the PK, which has had its problems in the past couple of years, or do you think they have the pieces to step in and it's really a non-issue?
I think it's a non-issue. Honestly, I really do. I think that they have the pieces in place. I mean, Jake Evans was could be a very, very solid penalty killer. He's a big piece of it. Like people kind of forget about him because of Armia, all the talk about Armia. I mean, I think Armia kind of towards the end kind of solidified himself in that role. Look, it definitely, it would the penalty kill would keep rolling if he would have continued on. But I think that they have more than enough pieces. I think Kapanen can probably step in there. They could fit some other guys in there, and just a good defense is a good penalty kill, right? And they solidified their defense, and I think that's an underrated. It used to be a good goaltender is your best penalty killer. Well, now I really truly believe a good defense is a strong penalty kill. So I'm not too concerned about that part. I think that, players can develop very easily into a penalty kill role. I find at the NHL level, I think that is probably one of the things that you can mold a player into the most. You can't make him into a center. You can't there's a whole bunch of things that I don't think you can do, but I think that you can really work out and put these guys, like the penalty kill is just, I mean,
like a Josh Anderson.
For sure, you could develop him and put him there. He has all the assets really that you need, and the penalty killer. He's speedy. He's big. Like he can make it work. You just have to kind of work with him every single day on it and turn him into that animal. I don't know what the role is going to be, but I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay.
I think the PK changed when you said it. Josh Anderson started knowing his role or was assigned a role, and he started being more in the PK. Jake Evans was really the PK guy more so than Dvorak. Dvorak, what the Habs are going to miss from him is his face-off percentage.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he didn't play much for the Habs. He was always hurt. At the end of the day, he was always hurt. So
and the penalty kill was always Evans or Mia. It was they're going to package them into and then all of a sudden in the offseason it was like it's Dvorak. Like I don't know how he got penciled into that penalty kill.
Yeah, I know.
That wasn't what the war was at the time.
No, at the end of the day, what Dvorak was being used for, if you remember, is it was left-hand face-offs in the offensive zone, and then he'd go right back to the bench
and then run or the start of an
overtime. Classic.
I'm so happy that it's not a thing anymore.
But the way I'm seeing it, and this is mainly, again, it's going to be because of Dobson. Not because Dobson's going to be on the PK, but it's because now Kaiden Guhle doesn't have to play on the second power play anymore. So now the way I see the PK being up, and it's just my lineup, me playing NHL basically, and you're going to see Jake Evans and Josh Anderson and Kaiden Guhle and Carrier, left, right, everything's all balancing out. That's going to be your PK number one. And then it's figure out what the PK number two is. So, maybe they'll miss Armia a little bit because at the end of the day, Armia is a fantastic forechecker. Whenever he's there, he's a fantastic forechecker. He shows up 1 out of every 28 games for the offensive side of things, but he's a great forechecker. He was physical. He was a big body. He was defensively responsible and had a good stick. So that it's more Armia than Dvorak. Dvorak at the time was 4.5 to have him on the Montreal Canadiens. Like now we could finally say that the Kotkaniemi trade offer sheet, the Bergevin solution to that, it's all done.
It's odd. It's odd that everybody lost in a trade. Does that happen often? That like all sides ended up losing?
Everybody lost on that trade.
Everybody lost that trade. Yeah.
That scenario, the way it played out, you're right. Everybody lost.
That one we're going to look back on for a long time.
But yes. So all this to say, I don't think they're going to miss Devo as much except for the faceoffs. But I think they might miss Armia a little bit, maybe a little bit, especially if before they got Dobson, they had Heineman penciled in there. Like before the Dobson trade came to fruition, and they actually thought that they were going to get Dobson. They probably said, okay, we're going to move on from Armia and, we're going to pencil in Heineman there. And now you're not doing that because you want to get Dobson, but Dobson allows for versatility on the power play and having somebody, like I said, like Kaiden Guhle to Go be a defensive defenseman for the
Okay.
PK. Go be more of a get your minutes there.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, not to downplay the PK, and I think it is important, but I think ultimately with the pieces coming in, they're going to shift guys around, and I think the PK is going to be fine.
And just be more disciplined.
Yeah. Well,
be more disciplined.
Fair. I think that's always the case. It's just one of those things where you sit back and it's kind of like, I guess, even though they've been sort of attacked, if you will, by fans for a long time, like, you know, why can't Armia be the good Armia that we see every 28 games, like you say, more often? And Dvorak, you know, he had all this problem in Arizona. He comes here. We figure, oh, he was getting those points there. He'll just take it to another level here, and he never did. They were constantly kind of scrutinized for this. And yet now that they're gone, everybody's clamoring like, "Oh, who's going to replace them?" And they had such a key point.
I think people are just clamoring
PK,
because
they're going to be all right.
I think people are just clamoring because before, when Armia was there, they knew where to slot him. And now there's a lot of new names, especially for the bottom six. When you look at Sammy Blais, probably Bolduc on the third line and things, and it's like, oh, okay, well, they can't immediately slot in somebody on the PK without having to think about it, especially the second PK.
It could be because they don't know the name.
You were going into the season and you knew, okay, Devo and Armia were going to eat up PK minutes.
No, that's fair.
One way or another, whether it's a second PK or whatever, they were going to eat up PK minutes. That was their role, and those were their responsibilities.
Okay.
Heck, there was a time Armia was on the power play. We're like, oh god, another.
Well, let's not even talk about the dark days of that. Let's not even go there. I don't even want to talk about that. But I do want to end on this one. Dave, do you offer sheet Mason McTavish?
Yeah.
Is that your plan A?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's my plan A, but he's definitely in line. Like, yeah, I mean, he's up there. I mean, I think that with what's available or rumored to be available and what I think you kind of have to throw your hat in the ring. I think I would. Honestly, offer sheets are never my thing. I'm not a big offer sheet guy. I think it's you give up a lot. It makes everything awkward. You give up a lot. It depends on how much you're going to sign him for. Then it's like, I don't know. I just feel always a trade is always the better course, because then you get a guy, and then now all of a sudden you're even more bloated on your roster, and you have to work out another trade somewhere else to get rid of somebody else. I feel I'm always more of a trade type of guy. But I mean, if you have to do it, sure, why not? I mean, I think at this point, the thing is that I don't know, man. Anaheim has shot a lot out the door. You know, they got rid of Zegras. I mean, I don't know if they could afford to just let him go and not match.
They got a lot of centers.
I know, but
to match what the offer would be to put Mason McTavish as your 3C, keep that in mind. That's the main piece to this. Forget the fact that you're hearing all these things that, oh, he's not happy, he might be 3C. Well, put aside his feelings. If you come in with an offer sheet, they have to match, of course, if they want to keep him. And they're doing that to keep him as 3C. I don't know.
The offer sheet route is not the right route, not for Montreal. And it's mainly because of the cap. Anaheim has a ton of cap. And even if a team comes in and offers, which would be ludicrous to go offer Mason McTavish $8.5-9 million, they can match it. Mm-hmm. That's not a problem. And they likely would, because they're not looking to have more prospects and picks. So they'll be like, I don't care about your draft picks. They don't need that. Anaheim. They
want to take the next step. Anaheim. They want to take the next step. The West is weak anyway, so why not?
It's not to say that they would not trade Mason McTavish. They can, and they can't even afford to do it, especially with bringing Granlund. They've got centers everywhere. Some of their centers are not quite ready. You know, Beckett, Seneke, and all that. Like, they just got drafted and whatnot. But like even now, the last draft, Roger McQueen, like they did very well. They've got prospects. They're kind of in a similar situation as the Montreal, where they're lacking maybe a little bit is right side defense, just like Montreal. You know what I mean? So that if Montreal, I think Mason McTavish.
They don't have a goalie, but yeah.
Well, no, they do. They have Dostal. They believe in him. He was very, very good when he was playing. Okay. He was overplayed. That's the problem. But when you look at Anaheim, even if Montreal comes in and makes an offer sheet, they're going to be able to match it. They got $20 million of cap space. Like there's no problems there to match it. So you'd rather go on the trade route with them and see what can be done. And I'm going to say this: Mason McTavish is an ideal, perfect 2C for the Montreal Canadiens on a long-term scale. Short-term, my dream, it's always Crosby, but that's not happening. So let's move on with that.
Okay.
But Mason McTavish fits in right away. He's already producing at 50 plus points. He's a bigger body. He plays a very good two-way game. He can score some goals. Like, there's nothing to dislike about Mason McTavish. He's already above 50% in the faceoffs too. But again, what's the trade package that Montreal would have to offer that would convince them? They want roster players too. Can they convince them a package where you're doing something and you guys are going to laugh at this, but like, Kirby Dach, Matheson, and whatever, maybe, I don't know. The sell job from Kent Hughes would have to be great, but we didn't know that Dobson was what was going to happen, and Heineman was the piece that was going to go the other way. You don't know these things, but you'd have to think if Mason McTavish's name was out there, even a little bit at trade deadline when he was playing on the fourth line, he was getting slotted, he was fighting with his coach and whatever the case may be, and I'm speculating on the fighting, it was just the rumors that were going around, that at some point Kent Hughes reached out and said, hey, what's it going to take to get Mason McTavish out of town? And they probably looked and said, well, you want Zegras? How about Logan Mailloux for Zegras?
If a trade can't happen, because to your point, they don't have the pieces that they're actively looking for, I don't care if they match. Do you offer sheet?
Because of where I think Montreal is, and I don't think they're going to have a chance at Gavin McKenna, I say yes, you do it.
That's the correct answer. I think that's the correct answer. I think if you look around and to Dave's, maybe to what Dave was saying, it's not plan A, but it's very close. It's very close to the top because I don't know. They're not prepared to give up their best prospects. And I don't see what roster player they're going to trade that has enough value to bring back a legitimate 2C.
But I am saying this.
This is something that they might do.
I am saying this. You're almost going to look at a Kotkaniemi Sebastian Aho thing playing out because one team has the cap space to do it and the other team doesn't.
It's possible. Or they're going to say, devil's advocate here, and we read into the rumors and pretend they're true for a second. This is a unhappy player who isn't going on very well with the coach, who doesn't see himself as it's management perhaps, who doesn't see himself as a 3C, sees two guys in front of him and has clearly no way to get in front of them, and is saying, makes his intentions known. And the team knows this. Offer sheet comes down and they say, you know what? We can get rid of this guy who's not happy and we don't have a way to move him up, and we can get a whole bunch of capital back for it. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to say yes. Because they do have a lot of depth down center. And to your point, they drafted another one.
They got wingers that are even centers. They're like, they have a very versatile team
everywhere. So I'm not so fast to say they match. I mean, might they? Might they? Because I know teams don't like to be offer sheeted.
No, I would think if they were a team that's like rebuilding or still stockpiling picks for prospects for drafts and things like that, then I would say, yeah, maybe they don't match. But because, like Dave said, they do want to take the next step, just like Montreal does. They've replenished their cupboards. They've addressed whatever weaknesses or pieces that they're missing, and that's where they want to kind of cover. They might look and say, why would I want 2 firsts, a second, and a third? Or why would I want a first, a second, and a third, depending on what the offer sheet is? They're going to probably look and say, okay, worst case scenario, if the threat of an offer sheet is there, maybe they look at Montreal's roster and they try to make something happen. I hate to say it, and I really hate to say this, but I think something can be worked between Carolina and Anaheim for McTavish personally. But
I mean, it's enough with Carolina already. They're everywhere, getting everybody. It's ridiculous.
But all this to say, yes,
if it's a Bergevin offer sheet,
McTavish fits right away in Montreal. Yeah. No questions asked. You slot him on the 2C. He's your guy long term because he's only 22, going on 23, and he's already productive. He's doing all the things. He checks all the boxes for a 2C.
I'm a firm believer in it too. I just think, just to clarify, if it's a Bergevin offer sheet, if it's a low ball, for whatever the reason, then for sure it's matched. I think you'd have to be aggressive with it. And then to that side of the coin, are you prepared to spend that much money on the kid?
You'd have to be about 7.5, 7.8. Basically, whatever Cole Caulfield is getting paid is what you're sending as an offer sheet. And if you go see where the cap is going, I don't think it goes through. One, I don't know if he's going to accept it because who knows how he's thinking. And his agent is probably looking like everybody else and saying, hey, no, pay me more now because in 3 years from now, it's going to equate to that amount anyway. So maybe it's going to be like 8.5 instead. Right? Like kind of like Ehlers' contract. In 3 years from now, it's going to be the equivalent of like 7.2 almost. So who knows? But Mason McTavish is an ideal 2C for Montreal. I just don't think an offer sheet. You're right. Offer sheet is not plan A. It's an option, but it ain't plan A.
I hear you, man. I hear you. You speak so highly of him. I fully expected to see his jersey up on your wall behind you there.
It's the next one.
Maybe it's the next one. If the offer sheet goes through, and who knows, he becomes a half maybe.
If somehow Hugo came out to Mason McTavish before the season started, this was literally one of the best off seasons the Montreal Canadiens have had. Probably ever.
It's so far everything's on the up and up, and it's great. So final thought before I let you guys go. Dave, do we have a new 2C by the time the season starts? Or are we rolling with a player that's on the team now? I could say Doc or New. It doesn't matter. A player that we have already. Yes,
I think Kirby Docs are 2C going into the season, and I don't think it's the right move. But I do think that that's probably where they're going to go. They're going to give him another shot. He's their guy. They paid a lot to get him. He's been bogged down by injuries, so you could use that kind of as your reasoning on why you want to give him another shot there. I just think that there's not enough available, really, realistically, to go do it. I mean, I'm not saying they're not trying, and I'm not saying they might not pull out a surprise.
Gut feeling.
Gut feeling.
We're starting the season
Kirby
with
Doc.
present roster. Kirby Doc's your guy that you think's going to be there. Vito, Are they going to get someone, or are they going to go?
I agree. I don't think they went into the offseason as Kirby Doc being their main plan for 2C. I just think it's going to work out that way because it was so limited. There wasn't that many 2Cs available. And the ones that were, got paid, or even 3Cs got paid out of Dvorak, and it just wasn't worth it. So I think they're going to gamble again on Kirby Doc having hopefully a career year, not get hurt. He's there, from everything we saw in the videos and all, he's best shape he's ever been. And at the same time, it's even for Kirby Doc. It's a contract year. He's got to prove to the world that he can play and not get hurt. He's got to get rid of that negative, that stigma that's on him that he's fragile and can't do it. Then he's got to live up to that third overall pick. And the fact that the way this season goes for him is not only on Kirby Doc, but it could risk making Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon get some egg on their face because that was the acquisition they made to have the 2C. Right?
Make them look mortal. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they might finally have that one little knock on them. The one blemish was like, you
fair enough.
That first and third for Doc.
I just to touch back on Christian Dvorak, he's making more money than John Tavares, who almost scored 40 goals last year and had 8 points, I think. What was Philly thinking? I don't understand.
One guy took a crazy hometown discount, and Philly is
Philly was just as desperate for a center as Montreal was when they drafted Kotkaniemi over Brady Tkachuk and Quinn Hughes.
Dude, these guys not watch hockey. It's just like I don't understand.
I mean, at least it's a 1-year deal, so we'll see what happens. But okay,
yeah, no choice to take that.
Wow,
I forgot which team it was that was rumored that they were offering like a 3 or 4 year contract, and he's like, no other team's offering me $5.4 million, even for 1 year. I'll sign that next year.
Ultimately, we're wishing the best. I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully, they have decent, time in their other teams, but they're gone, and so are we. That's it. That brings us to the end of our episode. And into the off season. So you might catch us a little bit more irregular with summer going on now and families and people being out and all this kind of stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be around. We'll be updating. If news breaks, if things happen, we'll pop on for sure. Thanks for being with us all season long. Again, keeping up with us. Always fun. We're going to keep on keeping on. We enjoy doing it. And thanks so much for listening. please take the time, like, subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciate that. And feel free to let us know in the comments below any of your thoughts about some of the topics that we talked about tonight. So, to bring to the end of the 2024-2025 season, for Dave, Vito, I'm Matt, and this was
Get Pucked.